December 1941. The North Atlantic. Night. HMS Stork cuts through black water, her bow rising and falling against the swell. Captain Frederick John Walker stands on the bridge, eyes scanning the darkness where Convoy HG-76 struggles homeward from Gibraltar. 32 merchant ships carrying food Britain desperately needs, already under attack. 2 merchantmen have already slipped beneath the waves, their cargo lost, their crews scattered across the freezing Atlantic. Walker's ASDIC operator calls out, "Contact, submarine, close." Standard procedure, written in Admiralty manuals, tested in peacetime exercises, drilled into every escort commander. Set depth charges for 150 feet. The assumed diving depth of a hunted U-boat. Drop them in a pattern. Wait. Walker does something different. Set for 50 feet. 50 feet. Far shallower than Doctrine recommends. Dangerously shallow for a submerged submarine. But Walker has studied something the manuals don't emphasize. U-boat commanders, hearing an escort ship's propellers overhead, often crash dive deep. They expect the charges to fall through the water column, to detonate far below them in the crushing depths. They don't expect the explosions to come early. The charges roll off Stork's stern. 4 seconds later, the Atlantic erupts. The U-boat surfaces, mortally wounded, her hull torn open by blasts she never anticipated. Crew scrambling onto the casing as she begins to sink. Walker's ship moves in to take prisoners. It is Walker's first confirmed kill. It will not be his last. But this moment, this calculated departure from accepted practice, carries professional risk. Senior officers don't welcome captains who operate outside established methods. They don't promote men who suggest the Admiralty might be wrong. Walker understands that. He chooses it anyway. Because by December 1941, Britain is losing the Battle of the Atlantic. And losing the Atlantic means losing the war. The crisis. The numbers are brutal. In 1941, German U-boats sank over 430 Allied merchant ships. Wheat from Canada, oil from America, steel and ammunition, powdered eggs, all sliding beneath the waves before reaching British ports. Tonnage lost exceeds tonnage built. Britain's reserves dwindle month by month. The island nation, dependent on imports for survival, faces slow starvation. Winston Churchill later wrote that the U-boat peril was the only thing that truly frightened him during the entire war. Not the Blitz, which rained fire on London. Not the fall of France, which left Britain alone against Nazi Germany. The silent strangulation happening in the mid-Atlantic, where convoys crawl across thousands of miles of empty ocean, and German submarines wait in coordinated packs. The Wolfpack tactic is devastating in its simplicity. One U-boat spots a convoy, radios its position. Others converge from across the hunting zone. They strike at night, on the surface, using their superior speed to slip between the lumbering escort ships. Torpedoes hit from multiple directions. Merchant ships burn, break apart, sink. Escort commanders struggle to coordinate in darkness, their radios crackling with distress calls, their searchlights sweeping empty water. And when escorts do manage to force a U-boat underwater, the submarine usually escapes. Here is the fundamental problem. A destroyer, or corvette, hunting a submerged submarine, relies on ASDIC, sound pulses that bounce off the hull. But to drop depth charges, the escort must pass directly over the submarine's position. The moment it does, ASDIC loses contact. The submarine disappears from the screens. The submarine commander knows this. He waits until the escort ship passes overhead, then immediately changes course. Left, right, deeper, shallower. By the time the depth charges detonate at their preset depth, following their slow fall through the water, the U-boat has moved. The explosion might be 50 yards away, 100. The submarine's hull rings with the shock wave, but she survives. Over and over, escorts hunt for hours, dropping pattern after pattern, achieving nothing but empty ocean and exhausted crews. Morale suffers, merchantmen die, the U-boats are winning. The unlikely innovator, Frederick John Walker, is not the man the Royal Navy expects to solve this problem. Born 1896, he joined the Navy as a cadet and served with competence but without distinction. By 1941, age 45, he has been passed over for promotion multiple times. While his peers command battleships and cruisers, the prestigious postings that lead to admiralties, Walker remains assigned to staff positions, anti-submarine training schools. To a career officer in the world's most prestigious navy, this is failure. The Royal Navy prizes aggression, the offensive spirit. It celebrates commanders like Horatio Nelson, who sailed straight at enemy battle lines. It does not celebrate men who think too much, who analyze when others want to attack. But Walker's years away from sea command give him something more valuable than a destroyer flotilla: time to study. At the Anti-Submarine Warfare School, Walker examines reports from every convoy action, every depth charge attack, every failed hunt. He analyzes patterns, reads intelligence assessments of U-boat tactics, tries to think like the submarine commander, the man sitting in a steel tube beneath the surface, listening to propellers overhead, making split-second decisions about when to dive, when to turn, when to run silent. Walker concludes that anti-submarine warfare is not primarily about aggression. It is about patience, psychology, understanding that the enemy commander is also afraid, also guessing, also trying to predict your next move, understanding that the enemy calculates probabilities just as you do. And he begins to question the standard depth settings. Depth charges set for 150 feet give U-boats too much time to maneuver after losing ASDIC contact. But if you set them shallower, if you attack at the exact moment the submarine believes it's diving to safety, you might catch the boat in the killing zone before it reaches deep water. The tactic has been discussed among ASW specialists, debated in quiet conversations, but remains outside standard practice. The risk is enormous. If you set charges too shallow and the submarine isn't there, you waste the attack. If the submarine has already gone deep, your explosions are harmless. The standard doctrine exists for a reason. It represents the Admiralty's best estimate of where submarines will be. Walker believes the Admiralty's best estimate is wrong. In December 1941, given command of the sloop HMS Stork and the 36th Escort Group, he finally has the chance to prove it. Convoy HG-76, the proving ground. Convoy HG-76 departs Gibraltar on December 14, 1941, 8 days after Pearl Harbor pulls America into the war. 32 merchant ships carrying the lifeblood of Britain's war effort, 9 escorts, including Stork, and the audacious experiment of HMS Audacity, Britain's first escort carrier, a merchant ship with a flight deck welded on top, carrying a handful of obsolete fighters. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of Germany's U-boat force, assigns 12 submarines to intercept them. He knows the convoy's route. He knows its value. He intends to destroy it. The battle lasts 9 days. Walker's superiors expect him to follow standard procedures, maintain station around the convoy, respond to attacks, drop depth charges at regulation settings. Walker has other plans. He operates aggressively. When U-boats make contact and begin shadowing the convoy, Walker doesn't wait for them to strike. He takes Stork out ahead of the convoy's course, hunting. ASDIC contact. Walker orders shallow settings. His officers question the order. Walker insists. Charges detonate at 50 feet. Oil and debris surface. First blood. But the more significant innovation comes on December 17th, when Walker encounters U-131 and employs a technique he's been refining in his mind for months: the creeping attack. The problem with depth charge attacks is simple. You lose ASDIC contact the moment you pass over the submarine. Walker's solution is equally simple. Use 2 ships. One ship, the directing ship, holds ASDIC contact, staying back from the submarine, coaching the attacking ship forward like a spotter guiding a marksman. The attacking ship approaches slowly, quietly, just 4 or 5 knots. Too slow for the submarine to hear clearly. Too slow to create a large wake that might warn the U-boat commander. And then, at the precise moment designated by the directing ship, the attacking ship drops its charges. Set shallow. U-131 has minimal warning. The explosions catch her ascending toward periscope depth. She surfaces, mortally wounded, sinking. Her crew abandons ship into the freezing Atlantic. Walker's methods have proven effective. But proving effectiveness and gaining acceptance are different matters entirely. Skepticism and validation. After HG-76 limps into Liverpool, the results speak with undeniable clarity. 27 of 32 merchant ships survive. 4 U-boats confirmed sunk. The highest kill ratio any escort commander has achieved in the Atlantic. The Admiralty faces uncomfortable questions. Walker operated outside standard tactical doctrine. He set depth charges at depths the manual didn't authorize. He used fuel and ships in aggressive patrols the convoy system didn't permit. By conservative standards of naval discipline, scrutiny is warranted. Some would argue reprimand. But he also achieved results unmatched by other escort commanders in the Atlantic. Results that might, if replicated, turn the tide of the battle Britain is losing. The Admiralty's response reflects institutional caution. Some senior officers remain skeptical. One success doesn't overturn years of tactical development. Others recognize the political sensitivity. If Walker is right, it means the Admiralty has been wrong. It means convoys have been sailing with inadequate protection. It means merchant seamen have died because doctrine was flawed. The solution is bureaucratic elegance. Walker will be permitted to continue his methods, but quietly. His techniques will be observed, results will be monitored. If they prove consistently effective, adjustments to doctrine will be made. Eventually. For Walker, this is sufficient. He doesn't need vindication. He needs permission to keep hunting. Hunter-killer. The second support group. By 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic has reached its crisis point. In March alone, U-boats sink 95 Allied ships. The shipping lanes are becoming graveyards. Convoys sail through fields of floating debris, past lifeboats and bodies. The Admiralty, increasingly convinced by Walker's mounting record, finally authorizes what he has long requested: Dedicated hunter-killer support groups. Not ships tied to specific convoys, but flotillas free to hunt U-boats aggressively, free to pursue contacts to exhaustion, free to operate as cohesive teams using Walker's coordinated methods. HMS Starling becomes his flagship, a Black Swan-class sloop, fast and well-armed. Around her sail, 5 other sloops: Wild Goose, Cygnet, Wren, Woodpecker, Kite, the second support group. They train together obsessively. Walker drills them in the creeping attack until every officer can direct it in darkness, in storm, in fog. He teaches them to think like submarine commanders, to predict where a hunted U-boat will turn, where it will try to hide in thermal layers, when it will attempt to surface and run. He teaches them patience. A U-boat can stay submerged for hours, sometimes more than a day if it goes deep and silent, conserving battery power and air. Most escort commanders give up after an hour or two, returning to convoy duties. Walker hunts for 20 hours, 30, however long it takes. January 1944. The second support group detects U-592 west of Ireland. Walker establishes contact and begins the hunt. 36 hours, a day and a half. For 36 hours, Starling and her consorts hold the submarine down, dropping precise patterns of shallow-set depth charges every time the U-boat tries to move. The German commander tries every trick in the manual: thermal layers to confuse Aztec, crash dives to escape, running silent to hide. Walker anticipates each one. Eventually, inevitably, the submarine's batteries die. Her air grows foul with carbon dioxide, 50 men breathing in a sealed tube. The commander has no choice. She surfaces. Starling's guns are already trained. U-592 goes down with all hands. There are no celebrations on Starling's bridge. Walker knows what just happened in that steel tube beneath the waves. 50 men suffocating, knowing they were trapped, waiting for the hull to collapse or the oxygen to run out. He knows because he has put himself in their position 100 times. The cost of mastery. Between 1941 and 1944, Walker personally commands operations that sink or share in the destruction of 20 U-boats. 20 confirmed kills make him among the most effective anti-submarine commanders in the Royal Navy. His methods are systematically adopted across the escort fleet. The creeping attack becomes standard procedure. Shallow-set depth charges become accepted practice. Dedicated support groups become policy. Walker's tactics contribute decisively to Allied success in the Atlantic. U-boat losses mount throughout 1944. Dönitz is compelled to withdraw submarines from the North Atlantic convoy routes. The flow of supplies to Britain resumes at sustainable levels. The Battle of the Atlantic turns, but excellence extracts its price. Walker drives himself with the same relentless intensity he applies to hunting submarines. Days without sleep, endless patrols in the freezing Atlantic, mental calculations of speed, bearing, depth, probability, the weight of knowing that every decision, pursue this contact or return to the convoy, attack now or wait, set charges at 40 feet or 60, might mean the difference between saving a merchantman or watching it burn. His health deteriorates. Colleagues observe the exhaustion, the weight loss, the moments when Walker seems to be somewhere else entirely, still hunting in his mind. They urge him to rest. He refuses. In July 1944, Starling returns to Liverpool after another patrol. Walker goes ashore, climbs the steps to his quarters. collapses, cerebral thrombosis, a stroke brought on by years of stress and exhaustion, by nights without sleep and days of calculated violence. Captain Frederick John Walker dies on July 9th, 1944. He is 48 years old. The Royal Navy accords him full honors. His coffin is carried through Liverpool streets lined with silent crowds, dock workers, merchant seamen, sailors who know what he accomplished. Thousands stand in the rain to watch him pass. He is buried at sea from HMS Hesperus, his body committed to the Atlantic he fought so hard to control. 17 warships form the escort. Aircraft fly overhead in formation. It is among the largest naval funerals the Royal Navy has conducted since Admiral Jellicoe. Legacy. Walker's influence extends far beyond his operational record. 20 U-boats sunk is an impressive tally. But his true victory is larger than numbers. He fundamentally alters how naval forces approach anti-submarine warfare. The creeping attack, coordinated, methodical, psychological, becomes foundational to modern ASW doctrine. The principle that understanding enemy decision-making matters as much as weapon capability. The principle that you must understand your enemy's mind, not just his machine. The recognition that tactical doctrine must evolve based on operational evidence, not tradition. After Walker's death, the tactics he pioneered continue to prove their worth. U-boat losses continue to mount. The convoy routes reopen. The flow of supplies resumes. Britain endures. But Walker's influence extends beyond World War II. Modern anti-submarine warfare, quiet submarines stalked by patient surface ships, helicopters hovering with dipping sonar, coordinated attacks using multiple platforms, descends directly from principles Walker refined on winter nights in the Atlantic. His insistence that shallow-set weapons could catch submarines before they reached safe depth influences the development of homing torpedoes and rocket-propelled depth charges. His hunter-killer groups provide the organizational model for Cold War ASW task forces that will patrol the Atlantic for decades, hunting Soviet submarines. And perhaps most importantly, Walker proves something the peacetime Royal Navy had been reluctant to accept. Sometimes the manual is wrong. Sometimes survival requires someone willing to question doctrine, to risk their career, to think differently, even when tradition and authority say otherwise. Walker was passed over for promotion because he didn't fit the Navy's image of a successful commander. He wasn't aggressive enough in the traditional sense, wasn't showy enough, didn't have the offensive spirit the service prized. He thought about problems when others wanted to charge at them. But when the Battle of the Atlantic hung in the balance, when Britain faced starvation and defeat, it was the quiet staff officer who thought about problems instead of charging at them. It was the passed-over analyst who studied patterns instead of seeking glory. It was that man who saved the convoys. Final frame. There's a memorial to Captain Frederick John Walker in Liverpool Cathedral, a simple stone plaque. No dramatic statue, no grandiose language. It records his service, his ships, his victories. It does not mention that he died of exhaustion. It does not explain how many nights he went without sleep, calculating angles and depths while merchant seamen drowned in burning oil. It does not calculate the human cost of his devotion. It does not need to. The Atlantic itself is his memorial. Every ship that crosses it safely, every convoy that reaches port, every modern naval officer trained in coordinated ASW tactics, every submarine crew that knows their enemy won't give up the hunt. every acknowledgement that doctrine must answer to evidence, not tradition. That is Walker's legacy. He understood that wars are not won solely by courage or aggression. They require those willing to question accepted methods when those methods prove insufficient. Those who risk professional consequences to pursue tactical truth. Those who understand that saving lives sometimes requires changing institutional minds. Those willing to be right when everyone else says you're wrong. Frederick Walker changed the Royal Navy's approach to anti-submarine warfare. It required years of quiet persistence. It cost him his health and ultimately his life. But he succeeded in the campaign that mattered most. The campaign to make doctrine serve reality instead of tradition. The silent campaign. The one fought not with guns and torpedoes, but with patience and mathematics and the determination to be correct. When institutional momentum suggests otherwise. If this account has moved you, please subscribe. Stories like Walker's, of innovation born from patience, of questioning doctrine to save lives, of choosing effectiveness over conformity, deserve to be preserved and remembered. That is the campaign Captain Walker would recognize. Not the explosions, not the sinkings, not the combat itself, the thinking that came before them, the thinking that made combat effective.